What's up, everybody? Season 1, Episode 1, Raleigh, North Carolina. We are with Danielle Edwards. I am so excited about this episode. Let's get going.
I'm Danielle Edwards, and I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm also licensed in South Carolina because Charlotte is like right on the South Carolina border. So I can kind of help people in that Fort Mill area as well. And actually, I grew up in South Florida. I've lived in New York City. I've lived in LA. So Charlotte, to me, though nothing can be New York, it kind of gives me a little bit of everything. And obviously, I'm happy. I've been here about 16 years. So.
Yeah, when I met you for the first time, I was immediately like, this woman talks really fast. She's had to at least lived in New York at least once. So I think that'll be really refreshing for everybody here because everyone usually tends us to slow down. So it'll be nice that you'll be speaking our language here. So one of the things that we wanted to ask right out of the gate was, what do you love most about your city in Charlotte?
Everyone here is so nice. That was my first thing when I visited here. Just how I remember this was before I think we had maps on our phones, but I remember they're like, "Well, honey, you're gonna go to the gas station." I mean, she's like drawing a map for me. I'm like, "Where am I?" And it just was so foreign. So I think that would be the first thing. The second thing is you can get a chicken sandwich for like $4, and well, now a little bit of inflation. So you can get like a good grilled chicken sandwich for $5. And I remember when I was living in New York at a time and I came to visit, I was like, oh my gosh, this would cost me like $12 in New York City. I'm moving back. So
yeah, now with inflation, it's like $17. Like
I know. I'm not kind of on a health kick, so I haven't ordered a grilled chicken sandwich. But that was always my analogy: is that just everything here is more cost effective. So I would say cost of living, and really just the Four Seasons. They're mild in the sense that everyone's freaking out now because we're supposed to get a bunch of snow on Sunday, but we might not even get it. It's just our weatherman. I don't know. But
all weatherman
in Florida, it's just nice to see fall. I never grew up with fall. I get spring, I get winter, summer. I joke with people going summer, the month of August, because we're kind of inland. That's when you go to New York and or Maine, or you go up north because it's really humid. I'm not gonna lie. But that's when you go visit your family up north, August. You go in August. And other than that, it's
perfect. So for those of us that are complaining about humidity in August here on Long Island, you're taking a break from it and coming here. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I just picture somewhere near water has got to be better than when you're inland. Does that make sense? So
absolutely. So speaking of that, you had noted here that your typical beach house, which I think is amazing. So if you wanted to live on the beach by you, like how much would it run?
Yeah, my clients, they just cashed out their little condo investment that they bought for $150,000 4 years ago. They sold it for mid twos, and they took that money and they bought a beach house, I think for $630,000 furnished, which they're going to Airbnb out and make. And I think I forget the math, but basically they're keeping a couple weeks for themselves. It's like her and her best friend bought it together. So like I get 3 weeks, you get 3 weeks, and then they're Airbnb-ing it out and they're making a profit. And that includes paying a property manager to manage it.
Wow. Nice.
So the beaches here are not like, they're just spacious and sand, and they're not crowded and they're not commercialized. And it's like going back in time. It's coming from South Florida, the beaches here to me are, I don't want to use the word, they're just different. I mean, they're just not,
yes.
It's kind of like a secret. I really don't want to be on the show talking about them, but they're nice. Like they're chill. If they're not party beaches, they're not spring break beaches, they're family beaches. They're relaxing and they're just really beautiful.
Nice. So that's definitely a huge selling point. And so your Four Seasons, and what about like, I will be honest, and I know it's going to sound so silly, but since you've lived other places, maybe you could relate to this. What about everyone's got like their comfort store, right? Like I know a lot of people here on Long Island, they like live for hours at Target, right? Do you have a Target within driving distance? Are you close to a Target? Like what's your big name brand stores?
We have all that. We have a Target, we have a Trader Joe's, we have Starbucks, because everyone's moving here from Long Island. They're all open in Italian restaurants. Like I can't keep up, and they're all amazing. So tons of Italian restaurants. I mean, I see the board. You got to go here. They're all like, do, 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 do. So we have that. I guess the bagels and the bread might not be as good because of the water from New York. But I think one
You
place said
know,
they ship the
I've heard
water
that's
down from
changing.
New York. Somebody said.
Yeah, but I've heard it's also changing because I heard it also had a lot to do with like the bagel makers that have moved there weren't like good to begin with, so that's why they had left. And but I heard from like solid pizza people and bagel people here that really they could take their talents anywhere, and it doesn't matter on the water; they'll make it work. So you have good news. I guess as the next generation of bagel makers retire, you should get a couple of really good ones in the area soon. I would hope.
I
Um,
hope.
so you mentioned here that for business and things like that. Do you want to touch on that? So for people that are wondering, like, are there jobs available by you? Like if someone moves there and they're relocating, what are the jobs like?
Well, Charlotte is one of the top 5 places everyone's relocating to. We are the second largest baking city in the U.S. to New York City. We are probably one of the largest tech hubs. Technology is huge here. Honeywell just relocated here. Amazon has a big, huge thing here. It goes on and on. Wells Fargo is making all their employees now come back into the office. So there are a lot of people who've been working remotely that now are. What's one of my clients like? I gotta get a house because if I'm not in Charlotte, I'm gonna lose my job. But it's companies are moving here, and they're getting the government. I guess is giving them tax breaks to make it happen, which is great. But our inventory, we just like everywhere else, we have an inventory problem. 60% less inventory. I would say, every house probably has for sure multiple offers, 20 offers, if that, for anything decent. But it's a pretty place to live. And I think the problem is people still have that mentality thinking they can get a deal. And like, yeah, that was like 10 years ago.
So
But I guess
so
it's still
so
a deal compared to New York standards, but New Yorkers love to
okay.
negotiate. I'm like, that's great. I'm like, but the deal is you get the interest rate and you get the house. Like, that's the deal.
So we to touch on affordability, since we're kind of like on that subject right now,
Mhm.
what you average 3-bedroom ranch. I think that's pretty relatable for anybody watching this. They can imagine a ranch.
Mhm.
Are basements common in Charlotte? Do you have a lot of basements? No basements? What's the
Yeah.
storage like?
So a 3-bedroom ranch, depending on the area and like the condition, could be anywhere from 250 to 450 for four. And I think if you were in a hot area like where I am, an area called Ballantyne, that those ranches are probably in more of the 500s now with multiple offers. Basements, there are basements, but there's not like a ton of basements. Our terrain is hilly, but not like shh. So there are basement homes, and obviously those are going to sell for a premium. But it's not like every home's a basement home, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they're fairly common here on Long Island. So if you're dealing with someone from Long Island, chances are they're going to ask you where the basement is 9 times out of 10. But we do have a handful of slabs and stuff so we do understand what a slab is too. On that, you said before, what is a buyer? And I know I didn't really pose you for this question, but what does a buyer have to do to be prepared if they're going to move into North Carolina? What would you say are maybe like 2 things that they should do before moving into the area? Because you said before, like they kind of thought that, moving to North Carolina, there'd be more inventory, there'd be more houses available. One thing about Long Island is we always remember that it's really only like 60 miles wide and 180 miles long. Like it's a very small area that we live on. So we always assume that there's no houses available here because we're just out of room. But large state
Right.
like North Carolina, you have a couple of miles you could work with. You mentioned tight inventory. What could buyers expect? Obviously, going into the springtime, you said multiple offers and things like that. What could a buyer do to better prepare themselves if they're going to walk into that market? What are maybe like 2 tips you should give them to make sure, aside from calling you first,
Um,
obviously?
yeah, so they'd have to have you sell their house at top dollar with a lot of money because
Yeah,
you're going to need a
that's easy.
lot of money to win those multiple offers. That's the
Yeah.
first thing.
Okay.
I mean, any house that's like there's houses that no one's buying, but they're all the houses like that back up to crazy roads or need a ton of work. So there's those.
Okay.
But anything good with like top 10 schools and like located good walk factor to everything. So to answer your question, is the best prepare is money. It's show me the money. You just need to be prepared to be very strong with your, we call it here due diligence, which is the money to take it off the market. In real estate, I realize is very different than in New York. And that's probably a whole other episode. But
Yeah.
so I would say money. And two, I think it's a lot of people, they need to visit the different areas. I think it's really hard. I think it's good to plan like a trip, get an Airbnb and, spend a few days in Charlotte. Because Charlotte, just like New York, where you are, right?
Yeah.
If you just took Manhattan, Upper East Side, the West Side, the Village, all of that is a completely different vibe. So Charlotte's the same way. We have suburbs and we have really rural like suburbs. And then we have the cool areas, I would say, are like the East Village, like really funky and artsy and gallery crawls. It's a lot to take in if you just come for a weekend. So I think that would be my best advice is to do that. And obviously we have the Blue Ridge Mountains, which are 2.5 hours away. We have beaches, depending on how fast you drive, or 3.5 to 4 hours away. So it's a large state. Like you have a lot of options.
Yeah.
That obviously if someone's interested, just call me and that's what I do. I'll help you with that. So
Perfect. I think that's an awesome answer then. What would you say? You see new construction? Is there a lot of new construction? If somebody wanted maybe like a new house, could they sit with a builder? Is the opportunity there for them? How long approximately would they have to wait? So somebody trying to time it, what should their expectations be? As far as waiting for that house to be complete?
So what I'm seeing with new construction because of COVID and the shortage of wood and supplies, I guess they're 9 to 10 months out. The real issue is people are camping out for lots in some of these in certain communities. They're gone like that. So working with someone who's in the know, who knows what projects and what's going on, that's really going to help you. But there is new construction, but it's either going to be like further out, like on the edges, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
or more infill lots, like smushed between like two older communities with like no backyard.
Okay.
So they're right,
Yeah.
In the if I can use Manhattan because like I know it, right? So if you just took the center of Manhattan, if you took like Herald Square, like the center, let's call that the center, right? There's no land there. So they're squeezing little parcels of like really nice townhomes and stuff in there. But if you go to the edges of Manhattan, like out by the water, you can definitely get new construction. But, you're just going to have to wait till those lots come up and you're going to be further from things.
Got it. Yep. So, closer to the jobs and things like that, smaller lots and stuff. So if you want a little land, expect to do a little more commuting, right? Which kind of applies here in New York. So we have something similar here on Long Island, right? The further you get away from Manhattan, prices go down a little bit, commute goes up, and land gets a little further, right? So kind of like anywhere else in the world. So if you're going to move to North Carolina, do not have the mentality that you are walking into a state with more than enough land for you. No matter where you want to live, you should be able to get 3 acres for $200,000 with a perfect, pristine new construction house and not bid against anybody. I think you're doing a good job letting people know that. I guess our markets are kind of similar in that way, but this is the part that I think is going to make everybody who actually watches this really, really happy, because here on Long Island, the average tax that we pay in property taxes, which over 50% go to our schools, and I'm all for supporting the kids and everything, but it is exorbitant the amount of money that we contribute into taxes and stuff. And we pay about an average of $12,000 annually for property taxes. So for somebody considering moving into your area, considering about $500,000 home, which is about our average price point. So if someone was going to retire from Long Island, take their $500,000, move down to North Carolina, what do you think they could expect with that $500,000? What would they be buying, and what would their annual taxes on that property be?
About $3,200.
It doesn't seem fair, but okay. So about $3,200.
And I've looked on some fancy sites. So the average tax, so you take, is about $3,000 a year for average. So you take the the $1 million homes and the regular whatever. So 3,000 is average. So about a house around 500,000, it'd be about 3,200 a year. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, a house about 500,000 here on Long Island, you're going to pay about $12,000 in taxes, depending on which town you live in. That could easily go all the way up to like 16,000, depending what the school district is. And in some cases, like you might get lucky and have pockets where you got 8,000. And there's a few towns left on Long Island right now where you could find $5,000 worth of taxes, but it's far and few between. So obviously, the taxes are the big thing. You touched on cost of living before, right? What you pay for a chicken
Mhm.
sandwich up here in New York versus down there tends to differ a little bit. You also mentioned like nice people. That sounds like a nice thing, right? New
They're
Yorkers
so
tend to,
nice. I mean, yeah, I
yeah,
mean, they're just people here are just so like nice. And I'm a mom now, so I don't get out and like have fun as much as I used to.
yeah,
But just the restaurant scene and all of that, like it is I can't keep up with how eclectic and awesome it is becoming.
yeah.
We're 2.5 hours from Charleston, which is the other thing I love about living here. If you just want like a quick weekend getaway, you have Charleston. I took my daughter snow tubing. We drove up 2 hours and 20 minutes, went snow tubing for 2 hours, got in the car and drove back. And then the beach. And then we have an international airport, which is another reason why so many corporations are moving their headquarters here. The tax breaks they're getting, and just access literally from Charlotte. We're a hub for you can get anywhere. So I love that.
That is definitely a good feature. I mean, we're a little spoiled here in New York. We have a couple of international airports, so we get our choice, but none of them are fun to drive to. So that there's
Ours is
that
perfect. There's
downside.
no traffic to our airport. It's amazing.
Y- Yeah, yeah. Commute wise, right? What's the general traffic like down there? Is it a little better? I mean,
I mean, you
so
can't even compare it to New York
yeah,
traffic. Yeah,
yeah,
that's unfair.
yeah.
Um,
It seems unfair all around so far. The any unique characteristics of any homes down there that you truly love that you can't find anywhere else that you've traveled and you've seen and you're like, oh my gosh, like this house like just always stands out to me as like the typical North Carolina house. Like what stands out to you? Or is it, kind of every builder kind of followed their own footprint? So there may not
yeah,
be
I
an actual
mean,
answer for that.
I just love the Southern charm. And my girlfriend has a house in, her family has a beach house in Avalon, New Jersey. So it's kind of like almost that vibe, but a little bit of a Southern twist. Just, the shutters and the brick and just really classic and traditional. The craftsman style is like really big here. You'll see that. We have some communities that developers have created that look very Charleston, New Orleans like, very brightly colored pastels. So it's just a neat place to be. And I mean, I'm biased. I live here, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. Yeah, no. That's great. For the investors, I have a few investors that follow me and might be watching. Fix and flip. Are there investment opportunities there? What's from a rental standpoint? Is there good ROI, vacancy rates, and stuff like that? Like, do you deal with a lot of investment from that standpoint?
I mean, I do have a lot of investors. I just feel like the deals now are, I don't use the word gone, but because literally everything's a bidding war, and most investors don't want to play that game.
Yeah,
So, like I spoke to one today, he's like, we're going to have to move further out. I mean, he means further out. He's talking 40 to 50 minutes out because there's no deals. Rents are increasing drastically here. And so we
when you
have like
say when
a
you say
major
rents are in,
issue. Like people can't find a house to rent. People can't
okay.
find a house to buy. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, housing crisis all around, I think. And I think a lot of that has to do with the people that are leaving. Although you wouldn't notice it here in New York. You would think there's all these vacant houses and stuff, but it's really not like that.
right.
You touched on rental. Can I ask you, like, what is an average 3 bedroom? So say if somebody wants to start with a rental before they move, right? Which might not be a terrible idea for somebody. They start with a
Yeah.
6 month lease to just kind of get a feel for the place, find their job, get their footing.
Mhm.
Um, what could they expect to pay if they can find one for a 3 bedroom house that possibly allows pets? What would the going
Yeah, like
rate
a
for
three
rent
bedroom
be?
house with good schools, nice, probably about 2,200 a month.
Okay, all right. So certainly behooves people to purchase there, right? Because I mean, obviously they'll save
Yeah.
a ton of money. The 2,200, unfortunately, here on Long Island, to get you anywhere between a 1 and a 2 bedroom, in like a garden apartment style. Whole house rentals tend to run about 3,500 and up.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I mean, it's all to offset the taxes. So not too
Right.
bad. But certainly, like any good real estate agent's advice, I think it would be purchase if you can, and save your money, because it's certainly a ton of money to throw away on rent when you think about how much the taxes are, portioned into your mortgage payment and stuff. Any other fees that come up to home ownership there that you may not consider, or closing costs or things like that kind of you find, like here in New York, everyone's always surprised to hear we're an attorney state, so you have to use a real estate attorney to close. Do you need a real estate attorney to purchase a house there in North
Yeah.
Carolina?
So North and South Carolina, I guess, and New York, we're one of the few states that need. It's different though, because we have our own contracts, and I can fill them in, and we sign, we negotiate everything, da 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 da. But we go to the attorney for the closing.
Okay.
So the
All right.
attorney gets the title and connects with the lender. So it's different, but we're an attorney state, but we write our own, like it's a fill-in contract. We fill it in and we negotiate our stuff. We don't have to wait days for it to go. What's the term you use there in contract? What's the
Yeah,
term?
so we use it right now. The term is more pending, is what they've switched it over to now. Like everything goes into a pending status.
Okay.
But yes, in contract, I know some places say in escrow. But we do. We are a full attorney state, so contracts are not official until an attorney looks over them and reviews them and stuff like that. So actually, the
Mhm.
buying process could be potentially a little easier in North Carolina if you got a great real estate agent that can affect that contract quickly. So who
Mhm.
handles money then? Should a person from New York expect to hand money over to a real estate agent for a deposit?
No. So here in North Carolina, so I have a license in both states, so it's different in both. But
Okay.
I'll just focus on North Carolina. So what would happen is if you went under contract, you would write a check to the seller for your due diligence fee to take it off the market. So let's say you say, okay, 8 grand to take it off the market. You write it out to Mr. Seller. If you back out during those 3 weeks, you lose that $8,000.
Just like that.
Gone. So it could be for
Gone.
any reason or no reason. You don't like, the seller would have fixed something. You lose your job. You're not being relocated. You found a better house, whatever. Bye bye 8 grand. It didn't appraise and you couldn't come to terms. Bye bye 8 grand. You get the 8 grand back at closing. Okay, as a credit. And then the second check you write is what we call earnest money. And that's made out either to Remax executive or the attorney, really doesn't matter, but it just stays in escrow. If you back out during that due diligence period, you get that money back, and that's normal. It used to be flipped, so the earnest money used to be huge, and the due diligence was like $200. But now in the market we're in, you're winning these offers with insane amount of due diligence, which is risky. So I just wrote one up the other day. It was like $16,000 due diligence, 800 earnest money, like just to
Okay.
fill in
All
the
right.
blank.
So I'm really glad that we dove into this, because we're gonna have to unpackage this a little bit for people that are watching this, because especially if you're a real estate agent here in New York, like none of this makes any sense to you right now, and you're scratching your head like, wait a second, what? So due diligence money is the money that I am going to gamble on the event of, like, hey, Danielle, I am Anthony, and I'm going to buy your house. I love it so much, right? The same spiel every buyer here in New York gives,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I am going to put down X amount of money. And if I don't put the rest of my money where my mouth is, I will lose said bet.
Yeah. If you back out for any reason whatsoever by 5 o'clock at the end of that period, you lose it.
And after that period, that money comes back to me if I back out, or no, it still
Right.
disappears.
Yep.
All right. So I got to stay in it for at least 3 weeks.
So it's all negotiable time period. So due diligence could be a month, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks. We negotiate that. Like when I write
Okay.
the offer, if I want to be really competitive, I'll do a 2 week due diligence. But I would only do that if I knew my buyer was solid, if I felt really strong about the integrity of the house, maybe it was newer, repairs, like so I would only recommend making that number strong if I felt really solid in the buyer's ability to close and that the inspections I kind of had a good sense as to what we were dealing with. Older homes, I'm always like, they're a can of worms, like, buyer
Uh,
beware. But yeah.
okay. So here's the deal. Now, it makes so much sense to do it that way, right? But
Because yeah,
why?
because yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going to take someone here from New York who's actually bought a house in New York, though, I'm just going to let you know why they're going to look at you like you have 17 heads. See, here in New York, because it's an attorney estate, there is no good faith deposit left anymore. We do not handle good faith deposits. Too many real estate agents back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s kept going to the casino before the good faith deposit was due anywhere. And since then, real estate agencies tend to not handle funds at all anymore. So what ends up happening is the buyer will get an accepted offer. The seller will take a full-on chance on that person, and there will be no money outside of the money that goes into the attorney escrow funds. So there is no money outside of that actual down payment, which if they get loss of job, loss of this, loss of that, and they end up with a mortgage denial letter, that entire down payment goes back to the buyer, possibly minus some lawyer fees, or if they had already ordered title or whatever it is. So there's little to no risk on the buyer's end when purchasing a house here on Long Island, except for the fact if you just wake up tomorrow morning and decide you want to willfully default on a contract that you signed. But outside of that, there is no extra. So like before, when I said, is there anything that the buyers should expect to do? It didn't even kind of resonate with you in the way that you wouldn't have thought anything in the way of a buyer not. So I will say that most of our buyers would be shocked to show up to North Carolina and say, well, wait, no, I just want an accepted offer. I don't want to give you money yet. So it doesn't work that way. And the amount of money that you say per average per house, how much in that little bit of a bet.
So that's what's interesting. And just to rewind a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
It didn't used to be this way. It didn't used to be this way. But what happened was sellers were fed up because they were taking their homes off the market and buyers were defaulting. So
listen, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah. So to make it more, and they came up with this due diligence period, like, hey, if you want to take my house off the market, you need to give me some money down, right? You get it back at closing. So to answer your question, a couple of years ago on a $400,000 house, due diligence would have been $500. Now I'm seeing offers at $400,000, $10,000, $12,000. I mean, people are crazy. I mean, a $400,000 house in a good area that people want to be in, close to stuff. I mean, it could get I'm seeing 13 offers.
And how much on average, if you could take a guess, how much on
10,000 due diligence on average, which is nuts. Okay. Like they're risking 18. Like I had one right, $18,000 a check for due diligence.
All right, so to rewind this meeting about 25 minutes. But it's a really
nice place to live.
Yeah. But they will.
And South Carolina's contract totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it is. And it's completely unfair and exactly what you expect. And the reason why most people want to leave New York, because it doesn't benefit anybody if you're living here in that sense. You have a house to sell, you're taking your house off the market, you're waiting sometimes 45 to 60 days for that mortgage commitment letter, only to find out you now have a denial letter and the buyer goes, sorry, so sad, and walks away. And literally you have nothing coming to you for that waste of time. And I can't tell you the amount of sellers I have that get frustrated with that, scenario. Right. And they want to understand, well, what can we do? Can we sue? You know what I mean? They go into so many different rabbit holes trying to figure out how they should be compensated because they were wronged. Right. And in a lot of ways, like in any other fashion, if you were to do this in any other industry, you would be marked as someone who is false advertising yourself as an earnest buyer, right? Like you had the intention to buy and you said you were qualified. Right. You showed up with a pre-approval letter. You swore you had a job, and then we did a VOE and find out you haven't had a job in like 2 years, right? Like, so that's false advertising, and you damn sure should lose your down payment for that. I'm not an unfair person. Right. Circumstances pop up. You have COVID. Something happens that really throws your life off. I truly believe that human beings at the end of the day know how to be human beings. I don't think we need a lawyer or any kind of like executioner to carry that out. I think that's okay, right? Extreme life circumstances, they do happen. But in respect of the seller and out of respect for the realtor and everyone who is taking time out of their day to put this offer together, to ask a buyer to say, hey, you're going to put up money. And just because you decided you wanted to bring Uncle Willie to the house, who thinks the house wasn't built good, well, Uncle Willie better be ready to write you a check for 18 grand. Because here in New York, what ends up happening is we take the house off the market and do the home inspection, and Uncle Willie shows up with the S on the back of his chest and goes, I haven't seen a house built like this since 1937. And I'm like, well, that's funny, because the house was built in 35, and they knew that when they decided to buy it and take the home off the market, and there's nothing lost but the $500 for the home inspection.
That's frustrating.
So be prepared to put your money where your mouth is when you go to North Carolina. If you're going to bid on a house, you have to do this due diligence, and be with a reputable realtor so they don't waste your money. Oh my God, I can only imagine what working with the wrong real estate agent must be like in North Carolina. Guys, you will blow cash left and right.
But yeah, just actually, you brought something up real quick, and I'm probably going to wrap it up. It's 30 minutes. No one's going to watch us for 30 minutes. Know how great we are.
Yeah. No.
Here, we need something called a pre-approval letter, which is you've been through underwriting and all of that with your offer. So I'll have people from New York like, oh no, I'm fine. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure you're great. But with your offer, I need a letter from Merrill Lynch or whoever saying you're great, like a pre-approval, assets verified. So that is done, and I need that letter before I can submit an offer. So there's that. But I think that's all I had to say.
Yeah, no, and you know what? And the same thing goes here, guys. You know as well as I do, if you've called our team for a house, you need your pre-approval letter, not your pre-qual, not the thing you can self-print off of wellsfargo.com by entering in information, by not actually having it checked by somebody. Anyone can do that. I'll give you a pre-approval for $10 million right now. You need to actually have it checked, like Danielle said. So listen, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, Carolinas are great. So if you're thinking of moving here, whether it's Charlotte area or anywhere else, just feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to you about my awesome state. And that's it.
Perfect. Reiterate, we're just going to wrap it up with, make sure you have your money ready when you go down to North Carolina. Make sure you have your house sold with me before you go down to North Carolina. Get in touch with Danielle before you go down to North Carolina. And you should probably spend a couple of weekends in North Carolina before you decide exactly where in North Carolina you want to live. But if you want to live near the beach, if you want to live near the mountains, or if you want to live kind of like in the middle of all four seasons, like we get up in New York, but not extreme, call Danielle, move to Charlotte, and she'll take care of you.
Yeah. And I'm right on the South Carolina border too. I do a little bit of that, Fort Mill, Lake Wiley. All right. That's another
episode.
Next episode.
South Carolina. All right, guys. Bye. Enjoy the night. Bye, everybody. Thanks so much.
See ya.